Welcome to Season 2, Episode 22. At the end of the last piece, I left you with a question. If submodalities are the sensory code, what directs the code? What instructs the nervous system which structure to run and when? The answer is language, and not language as description, language as instruction. Here is the assumption most people carry, that words report on internal experience, that language comes after the experience and labels it. That is not what happens. When a client says a memory is right in my face, the words did not just describe the structure. Saying it ran the structure. When a practitioner asked, "And where do you feel that now?" the question did not observe the sensation. It directed attention to the sensation and brought it online. Language is not the report. Language is part of the operation. And there are two language tools worth naming, and they do opposite work. The first is the meta model. It is the language of precision. When a client speaks, the surface of what they say has lost information. When somebody says, "I can't," everybody thinks that, or it's hopeless. These are compressed. Something has been deleted, distorted, or generalized on the way to saying this sentence. The meta model recovers the deleted or removed data. Can't. What was missing in a statement like "I can't," or "you can't," or "they can't," right? So what would happen if they could? Might recover that. Or you might, when they say "everyone does this," there's a lot of deleted information. You might ask, who specifically does this? This will get us into greater levels of detail. Or if somebody says this is hopeless, you might ask, hopeless how, or hopeless compared to what? Now, this is not interrogation. It is recovery of missing data. You are bringing the deep structure of the memory back online so you can see what is actually encoded, not the compressed summary of it. The second tool runs the other way. It's called the Milton Model. The Milton Model is the language of artful vagueness. Where the meta model specifies detail, the Milton Model deliberately leaves space, ambiguity. It might sound like this. You might begin to notice something change. Or, as you let that settle in your own way. Here, the language is unspecified on purpose. Why would you ever want vague language? Because vague language lets the client's own nervous system fill the space with its own structure. It directs process without dictating content. It moves underneath conscious resistance because there is nothing specific to resist. One model recovers what is there, the other directs what happens next. A practitioner needs both. Now, the larger principle underneath both, every experience is held inside a frame, a context that determines what the experience means. The same event inside "I failed" means one thing, and the same event inside "I found the edge of what I trained for" means another. The event did not change, the frame changed. And the nervous system responds to the frame, not the raw event. This is what reframing actually is. It's not positive thinking. It's not telling a client to look on the bright side. It's changing the contextual container the representation sits in. So the same content produces a different response. Effective memory resolution, or AMR, is the process of resolving emotionally encoded neural patterns that continue to influence physiology, perception, and behavior. Language is how you run that process with precision. You use meta-model precision to activate the exact encoded memory, not a vague summary of it, the actual representation. You use Milton Model direction and pacing to keep the client regulated while the window is open. And you use framing to deliver the update, the new meaning, the new content inside that window. Language is not rapport. Language is the instrument. A question I hear regularly: why does the same sentence help one client and bounce off another? Well, because the words do not carry the meaning. The frame does. The same words dropped into two different frames produce two different internal operations. Now, a skilled practitioner is not choosing better words. They are reading the client's frame first, then choosing the language that operates inside it. A second question I hear: can you talk someone out of a trauma response? Well, to be frank, not with content. You cannot reason a nervous system out of an encoded pattern. But language is not only content. Used precisely, language activates the pattern, holds the regulation, and delivers the update. That is not talking someone out of it. That is using language as a tool inside the mechanism. The distinction is everything. And a third question might sound like this: why is precise language so rare in change work? Well, because most training teaches rapport, warmth, present, and stops there. These things matter. However, they are not the same as linguistic precision. Precision is teachable. It's a discipline. And it is a difference between a conversation that feels good and a conversation that changes the encoding. So if you take one thing from this monologue, take this: language does not describe the internal experience. It directs it. The meta model recovers what is encoded, and the Milton model directs what happens next. Frame determines what any of it means. A practitioner's language is not their bedside manner. It is the instrument they operate the mechanism with. And this brings us to the next question. If language frames experience, what happens when the frames stack? When a client has a feeling about a feeling, a belief about a belief, shame about being afraid. The frames do not sit side by side. They build a structure. And the highest structure they build is identity. This is what we examine next. Now, if you want to learn to use language as an instrument, we run a certification course where we teach the meta model, the Milton model, and framing as clinical tools inside the reconsolidation window. The link is below to that course. And if you want to have a one-to-one conversation with me about anything, but specifically about getting certified, there's a link for that as well. I'll see you in the next monologue.